Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac. I'm your co-host, Adam.
I'm Rebecca.
What's new, sweetheart?
Well, it's Christmas next week. That's kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I got you some, I think, cool presents. Do you want to know what they are?
No.
Okay.
So
What'd
supposed
you
to be
get
a
me?
surprise. I'm not telling you.
Why not?
No, part of it's because it's a surprise, and part of it's like I honestly can't remember. Gotta go find it. I
You
know where it's at though.
That's perfect.
So it's
Yep.
good. I know one thing. I know one thing specifically. I let you have one present already. It was the we got BritBox.
We did,
Yeah,
and we
so
watched.
it's gonna be fun.
We watched the first episode of a crime drama called Shetland, and it's set. Is it the Hebrides that it's set? It's on like it's everybody has a Scottish accent, and it's all rainy and foggy and gorgeous. Like the landscape out there is insanely beautiful. And
we spotted my house. It was on one tiny little island in the middle of the water. Nobody was there.
The island was only big enough for that house.
It was great. It's my house.
If you fall through the door, you're in the water. But anyway, so yeah, we watched that. That was really cool. I'm excited to.
Also, the Poirot seasons are there too, which I have those on DVD as well. But you know, it's easy to just point and click while you got it. I mean, come on.
I have those on DVD, but
I love those. I love them.
Yeah, we're doing part 4 of the Nazi experiments. It's
just so you know,
heavy stuff.
Trigger warning for this entire episode.
Yeah, okay, trigger warning. It's going to be gruesome. If you got younger listeners or viewers, be warned.
Going to be some mentions of torture, murder, experimentation on humans, and
and even further, their justification for doing so is like
pretty awful.
Yeah. All right, let's go to some comments. Spotify here, we've got Phelan says, in reference to your local news story, radioactive wasps are my personal worst nightmare. In reference to RFK Jr.'s comments about vaccines, pretty sure vaccines are tested at least as much, and likely more, than Dear Leader is tested for preventative monitoring to maintain cognitive fitness.
That's true.
Low blow alert. Sounds like the children who received the vaccines mixed with the muscle relaxer died from a drug overdose, an experience which he should be personally familiar with, not vaccines.
Yeah. True.
Oh man. What a burn. Slats 11 on the Nazi experiment part 3, our previous episode, says, at the end, y'all mentioned fear driving actions, and it reminded me of a quote from the greatest philosopher. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Definitely, Master Yoda.
Yeah. And honestly, like you always see fear and hate together, and anger. All of that just kind of goes together. If someone's really angry, there's usually fear driving it.
Loki Snake, aka Daniel Soar, he says, we need a t-shirt or a coffee mug with a picture of antimony. He says picture or antimony. Maybe it was picture of antimony. Anyway, he says it should say bippity boppity, don't do that.
Yeah.
We can make that happen very easily.
Just put all the, heavy metals and such on there.
Yep.
Don't do it.
Yeah, it makes more sense if it's a picture of antimony that says bippity boppity, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then Daniel again, mirrors definitely used to be backed with silver until it became cheaper to use aluminum. On another rabbit hole, a justification for slavery was the curse of Ham. Yes.
Yeah, that was so weird to me when I learned that.
Exactly what you're talking about, Dan. I grew up in fundamentalist, Pentecostal, charismatic Christianity. Yeah. Man, I know exactly.
There's a Mormon belief too of something similar.
The Book of Mormon specifically mentions that dark skin is a curse.
I remember hearing that through a couple of friends who used to be Mormon.
Yeah.
So,
the curse of Ham. Canaan saw his father drunk and naked, and Canaan and
Noah. Wasn't Noah his father?
Was it Canaan or was it Ham? Wait, is Canaan another name for who were his sons? Shem, Ham, and Japheth?
Who, Noah's?
Was Shem renamed Canaan at some point?
No.
I'm losing track.
I think part of it was Cain killed somebody.
Well, that was
Genesis.
Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
This says Canaan. He's calling this guy Canaan, like the land of Canaan.
Well, see, I've also heard it said that because Cain killed his brother, right?
Abel.
He was
Yes.
marked, and they say that that mark was his skin being darkened. So that's the story I always heard. There's probably other stories too, though, because
never mind that everybody in that book was Middle Eastern. There are no white people there.
But that's the story I heard. But I'm sure there's other versions.
Oh God. Canaan saw his father drunk and naked, and Canaan and his descendants were cursed to forever be servants. Canaanites were said to be black, so it was okay to use black people as slaves, since the Bible said they were servants, despite nothing saying Canaan was black, and the fact that his grandfather Noah was most definitely white. But yes, I have heard of this this teaching from the Bible. This one, and along with what's known as the two-seed doctrine, which is that Caucasians are
balloons. Sorry, balloons came up on your side.
Oh, it's because something I did with my hand. My gestures are turned.
It's funny though, because you were like, also serious thing, and then balloons came flying out. It's great.
The two-seed doctrine teaches that Caucasians are the descendants of Adam and Eve, and that anybody with dark skin are the descendants of Eve and the devil. Satan.
What?
Yes.
Needless to say, though, those people are not. Those people were not white.
No.
So Adam and Eve weren't white.
No, they weren't.
I just don't understand.
In the minds of whoever's writing the creation account in the Pentateuch, nobody's thinking these are white people. Nobody's saying it.
Because most white people come from places originally where
far to the north.
Yeah, it's colder.
The Anglos.
They're not getting as much sun.
No.
So they're not
Anglo-Saxons, the Vikings, the Scandinavians.
Genetically speaking, they don't have as much need for the melanin.
Exactly.
Or whatever. Like it's all in relation to sort of adaptation and stuff like that. It's not this whole like God made this one first. It's like no, it's got to do with adaptations to your environment.
Right.
So
anyway, that's the two-seed doctrine that was taught freely by many of the founding figureheads of the church movement that I was born into.
That is,
and they act as if William Branham, he taught it directly from the platform. So did Gordon Lindsay, who was William Branham's campaign manager for years. Lindsay founded the Christ for the Nations Institute, which was eventually led by Dutch Sheets, who is now one of the biggest figureheads in MAGA. Anyways, it's a rabbit hole, folks.
It doesn't say anything in there about Eve having relations with the devil.
No, it doesn't. Moving on. We'll do some bonus episodes about this. I can tell.
I am made of questions right now.
Loki Snake says, this is our last comment here. Another fun British prophecy is from Mother Shipton. She said that if the High Bridge in Knaresborough falls 3 times, the world will end. It's fallen twice, and the pub beside it is called World's End.
Come on, Bridge. Come on. We tired.
Oh, man.
Come on.
All right. That's going to take us to housekeeping. Be sure to follow us or subscribe or like, share, whatever, on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. Thank you in advance for 5-star reviews anywhere that's applicable. Be sure to follow us on socials. We got links in the show notes. The Patreon's up and running. Let us know what kind of content you'd like to see. At the lowest tier of the Patreon, for $1 a month, you get access to weekly bonus episodes. You can leave a voicemail for the podcast to listen and react to. You get shouted out by name on the podcast. You get access to the podcast Discord. The second tier at $3 a month includes all of that, plus the Poison and the News segment that Becca and I do together. And then the top tier, the $5 a month tier, includes all of that stuff and what are known as Camillasodes, which are fun, educational, neurodivergent, centric episodes.
Family-oriented in a way.
Family-oriented.
With my daughter, Camilla, because she likes to do things with me like this. So.
The next one, the word on the street is, the next one will involve planting Venus flytrap seeds and pitcher plant seeds.
Well, part of it, yeah.
Yes.
Because my daughter has just gotten really interested in that. We talked a little bit about carnivorous plants a while ago, and so we're going to do some demonstrations with stuff. But also the Neuromix chat is part of the $5 thing.
The Neuromix chat is also in the $5 tier. Those are episodes. Yeah, those are episodes where Becca and I discuss our experience as a neuromixed couple, and also the live streams on Patreon.
Mm-hmm. Which we did one last week. That was like 2 days ago. I was like last week, like that was so long ago. But
is that in the lowest tier or the $5 tier?
I think that's all of them.
Okay, that's in the $1 level.
Yeah,
okay, great.
And, that's through all of them.
And we just found out Patreon archives live streams, so you can literally put it on anytime you like and listen to it, just like a podcast episode, or watch it if you like. Speaking of being shouted out by name on the podcast, the patrons are as follows: 87 Pens Girl, 71 Mara Santiago, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shatreet, Jay Wint, Incan Hafner, Kiri Yorsek, Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Geiler, Liz B, Willie Wolf NZ, Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, Sasha Rubel, Maya Shostak, Maggie's Yarm, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Nitin Ninja, Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, T-Bug, Christine Moljadi, Morgan Brittingham, Blau Frosch, a.k.a. Clara Jurisons, Vix, Anne Maria, Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Too Fidgety, Wendy G, Elena MK, Caitlin Martin, Pungrammed 101, Minna Snoda SPT, Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Simone Valdez, Christian Skredegard, Bonnie, Omadi, Rynel Alara, Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, Lynn Simpson, Melissa Emmel, Desiree Davis, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Dalek Party, The Warped Witch, Dizzy Dancer, Creative Otter, Yadmit, Supergirl Sway, Rachel, Anya Brandt, Ebby, Leah Marie Matson, Lady Digitalis, Jesse, Shay 10, Julia Franzoni, Sparks, Gloria Eichmann, Thomas Huff, From Strings to Things, Soy Kasumi, Jessica Gasparini, Kate Lennon, Donna Lanjanese, Lauren Smith, Anna G, Serpentine Fire, Melanie the SLP, Stuart Lee, Chris Millanak, Mackenzie Kennedy, Libby, Hetty, Hantapalooza, J Moon, Kelsey H, Paper Sky, Hannah Cook, Nikki Larkin, Campazar, Rar, Britt Clark, Paris Longer, Andrea, Shameless Agitator, Ruby Salazar, Cassandra Smiles, Daniel Soar, Jasmine, Kapow, 73, Dr. Doom, Paya Coronin, Vanessa Nitterberg, Maureen Hart, Justin Higgins, Nigel Hawkins, Judy Lowe, Nissa 16, Seamus Picked, Lisa DW, Laisha Paris, Jesse Pollard, Sarah, and please welcome our two newest patrons, Jahira from Baldur's Gate 3 and Everyday Delirium.
It's like Jahira, I think, in Baldur's Gate.
Jahira?
There's like one letter difference,
apologies.
I think, though. Maybe she pronounced her name the same way. She's a druid. She's pretty cool.
All right, dear. Let us continue with our Nazi experiments series.
Yeah, like it's crazy.
Our 13-part series.
It's going to be 13 parts. My estimate is this one and then one more.
2 more.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
It's going to be. I can feel it. I can feel it in my nuggets.
Okay. But this week we are talking about a lot to do with poison, which makes sense because it's what our podcast is usually about anyway. But these are specific poison experiments that were done by the Nazis on unwilling human subjects in these concentration camps. And so these particular poison experiments occurred most often at Buchenwald and Sachsenhausen concentration camps. And as far as we know, the first of such experiments began in December of 1943. Now, I say poison, but it's going to sound like a lot of experiments involved poisoning to some degree because it involved some either chemical or involved some sort of, but in this case, we're actually talking about various alkaloid poisons. Like we've talked about like biological poisons, plant poisons, those kinds of things. And these were done to measure the lethal doses of various alkaloid poisons. That was their reasoning. That's it. There's no real medical reason or curative need behind these experiments. Not that they were doing that for any of the others either, but this is literally just them poisoning people to see what would happen and when. An alkaloid poison was administered to 4 Russian prisoners in their food without their knowledge. These 4 survived what was given to them, but they were subsequently strangled via hooks attached to a wall and their bodies studied in autopsy. That was just one case there. And I have the book that I've been referencing quite a lot of here. It's called Doctors from Hell. It's actually Vivian Spitz is the author. She was one of the court, not reporters, but the
stenographer.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
For the Nuremberg.
She wrote this
medical trials.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So.
What a gangster! Wow.
But yeah.
Good for her.
And she talks about a lot of stuff that, she heard from the cases, but also like her time there and how all that went. But I want to read some testimony involving this particular case she brought up, because she has like excerpts from the testimonies and reports and stuff in here, which was really helpful. And this is just an excerpt from the testimony of a camp inmate named Dr. Eugen Kogan. And he was used as a prosecution witness for a couple of different trials. We've mentioned his name before. So he is discussing this particular case. Says the one case was about the turn of the year, 1943 to 44, or in the late fall of 1943. A second case was probably in the summer of 1944. In each case, Russian prisoners of war were used for these experiments. In the first case, various preparations of the so-called alkaloid series were put into noodle soup and administered to 4 of these prisoners of war who were in Block 46. They, of course, had no idea what was going on. 2 of these prisoners became so sick that they vomited. 1 was unconscious. The 4th showed no symptoms at all. Thereupon, all 4 were strangled in the crematorium. They were dissected, and the contents of their stomachs and other effects were determined.
Sounds like they reached for strangulation a lot.
He goes on to say, in order to determine the fatal dosage of poisons of this type, the SS court ordered an experiment on 4 Russian prisoners of war. And he's basically saying this is what I just described. Other experiments involving the direct poisoning of unwilling subjects in these concentration camps were done with even more violent methods. Within the evidence used at the Nazi doctors' trials, there was a report from Dr. Mrogrowski dated September 12th, 1944. In it, he describes an experiment in which 5 prisoners were shot with bullets containing some crystallized poison to test if this entry method was effective, and if so, what took place after the fact. And I have some of his report here, in which it says, the experimental subjects in a lying position were each shot in the upper part of the left thigh. The thighs of 2 of them were clearly shot through. Even afterwards, no effect of the poison was to be observed. So these 2 experimental subjects was therefore exempted. The symptoms of the condemned 3 showed a surprising similarity. At first, no peculiarities appeared. After 20 to 25 minutes, a motor agitation movement and a slight excretion of saliva, drooling, set in, but stopped again. After 40 to 45 minutes, a stronger salivation set in. The poisoned persons swallowed repeatedly, but later the flow of saliva became so strong that it could not even be overcome by swallowing. Foamy saliva flowed from their mouths, then choking and vomiting set in. After 58 minutes, the pulse of 2 of them could no longer be felt. One of the poisoned persons tried to vomit. To do so, he introduced 4 fingers of his hand up to the knuckles in his throat, but nevertheless could not vomit. His face was flushed. The other 2 experimental subjects had already early shown a pale face. The other symptoms were the same. The motor unrest increased so much that the persons flung themselves up and down, rolled their eyes, and made meaningless motions with their hands and arms. Finally, the agitation subsided, the pupils dilated to the maximum, and the condemned lay motionless. Death occurred 121, 123, and 129 minutes after entry of the projectile. So, he's describing like the 5 who were shot in the thigh with poisoned bullets, if you will. 2 were not affected by the poison because they were shot through, so it didn't stay within them. And the 3 others are who I just mentioned here, who died because of the poison wounds. Those charged with these poison experiments included some of the people we've already talked about: Genskin, Gebhardt, Mogrowski, and your favorite, Poppendick. Only Mogrowski was convicted, however.
I'm 12 years old. Everybody hang on.
Yeah, we've talked about these names before, so if there's any new ones, I'll tell you who they are as well. But feel free to go back and listen to who these men are. Most of them are these Nazi doctors being charged with these crimes, if you will. Okay, when not using alkaloids for this direct sort of poisoning, There were actually other such types of experiments in which the body was made to endure toxic conditions. And some we talked about already. I mean, like certain disease states being forced upon people as well. But some of these experiments were performed by Nazi doctors in the fall of 1942 at Dachau and Auschwitz concentration camps. And these involved the simulation of battlefield injuries on unwilling participants and the inflammation and infection of those injuries. These subjects were literally injected with infected tissues and drainage from such, literally pus. This was incredibly painful and damaging. Half of those infected received biochemical or homeopathic type treatments. From my understanding, these would include like herbal treatments, supplements, making them have special diets, that sort of thing. And the other half were treated with typical allopathic methods, such as conventional medicines, antibiotics, those kinds of things. Specifically, in this case, with sulfanilamide, which is an antibiotic. Mm-hmm. Which at that time was a big deal here in America, and I think they had heard about it and were like, "Well, what's so big about it? We want to see if it's this miracle they've been talking about." Those who became severely ill, often those treated with the homeopathic biochemical therapies, often refused treatment due to the amount of times each day this particular treatment had to be given and the lack of effectiveness of it anyway. These sort of herbal type remedies had to be administered like every 5 minutes, day and night. So you can imagine that's like, and also what's the point? It's not doing anything. Yeah. In one group, 20 German prisoners were used as subjects, and 7 of these died. Another 40 clergymen of different nationalities were infected as described, and 12 of those died. And I have some testimony for these particular cases as well. Mm-hmm. I have the amount of coloring I've basically done in this book. This is the testimony of Heinrich W. Stoer, one of the prosecution witnesses, also an inmate nurse at Dachau concentration camp. They asked, "Witness, did you ever hear of the sepsis infection or phlegmon," which is like inflammation. It's spelled like phlegmon. So I'm like phlegmon, but it's phlegmon. It's like phlegm. Okay. You know, phlegmin. But their word, for inflammation here. Experiments at the Dachau concentration camp. And he responds, "Yes, these experiments were conducted at my station. Mainly, phlegmon was treated. It was very general in the camp. That is to say, it was the typical camp disease. So your typical like inflammation, infection. The biochemical treatment was carried out in the following manner. 3 similar cases were observed. One of these cases was given allopathic treatment, another biochemical, and the third one received only ordinary surgical treatment. That is, the third one received no drugs whatsoever, and the wound was treated in an ordinary way with bandages and so on. These were the directives of the physicians who were there. We saw on many occasions that the patient was cured much faster, who received no drugs or injections." Experiments of that kind were conducted for many weeks, and if I may, as a layman, make a judgment, I must say that the physicians, according to my observations, were not satisfied with these experiments. In addition, I have to emphasize that not only wounds were treated according to these methods, but internal diseases too. They tried to find out whether biochemical treatment was suitable for treating the thirst for water, which was so frequent in the camp, which they were, depriving them of. Of course. We saw that the biochemical drugs had no influence whatsoever as to the cause of this illness. During the fall, this Dr. Schutz told the camp doctor, whose name was Babo, to infect a number of people with pus. We nurses were told nothing about that, and we did not know the purpose. These experiments were conducted on a group of men, and they extended over a period of approximately 6 to 7 weeks. First, a group of Germans were infected with pus. We nurses had no idea of the cause of the illness, and we gave the patients the drugs that were ordered by the physicians. I emphasize again that half of these people received allopathic, the other half biochemical treatment. As nurses, we could observe the following facts. The patients who received allopathic treatments were cured much quicker, that is, if they had any power of resistance to their illness. But the patients who had to take those pathological tablets, if I remember correctly, died with the exception of 1 person. So those who were given sulfanilamide or the antibiotic, if you will, were more likely to survive, which makes sense. Like, I don't know why there's no real purpose for them doing this except for to hurt
make
others.
Suffer. Yeah, that's it.
There were approximately 10 persons who at that time were infected. The second group consisted of 40 clergymen of all nationalities and brothers of religious fraternities. These patients were selected from the block where the clergymen were housed. They were selected by the chief physician, Dr. Walda, and were sent to the operational room of the concentration camp Dachau. They were operated on by Dr. Schutz and Dr. Kieselwecker, and these experiments were conducted on them. A number of nurses and also personnel of the operating room and I myself saw how the injections were made. We were standing in the anteroom of the operating room. And so the prosecutor's asking what phlegm means. And he says, phlegm, as far as a layman can answer that question, means an inflammation of the tissues. And in the camp of Dachau, they were very numerous because the people there were mostly sent to the hospital too late. Typical camp phlegms, as far as I know, are caused by germs, so like infection,
Of course. There's no hygiene.
Persons also got phlegms who suffered from lack of water. In answering a question of how many died in the first group of 10 Germans, he says, I believe that the first group consisted of 10 people, whom, as far as I remember, 7 died. For the second group, he mentions, I've seen a list of the survivors, and according to that list, 12 clergymen, or rather brothers, must have died. After the injection, Dr. Schutz gave instructions to the nurses that one half of them should receive allopathic, the other half biological treatment. I emphasize that the group which received allopathic treatment had special drugs, the so-called sulfanilamide drugs. We had the impression that the physicians wanted to prove that the biological drugs were not suitable to cure such a severe disease. The greater part of those who were treated biologically, or rather all of them, without antibiotics, developed abscesses and very deep abscesses. Some of the persons who received allopathic and prophylactic treatment with sulfanilamide had no abscesses. They asked, did the inmates who endured this treatment suffer pain? And he says, yes. Severe pain? As far as I know, the pain was very severe. So I know that was long, but I felt like it was
No, I'm with you.
Worth reading.
Yeah.
Poppendick, Oberhuser, and Fischer were acquitted of such charges. Gebhardt was found guilty on the charges of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and on his membership within the SS. Of course, he objected to his guilt, stating that he had no previous knowledge of the experiments mentioned. He was actually found guilty of 12 different medical experiments, actually, and eventually sentenced to death by hanging.
Strangulation, huh? How about that?
Then there were the polygol treatments. The polygol experiments.
Say it again.
Polygol?
Polygol. Okay.
GAL.
Gotcha.
Polygol. These were carried out by Dr. Sigmund Rascher at Dachau. We've heard that name too before. These, like the previous poison experiments involving alkaloids, involved prisoners being shot with bullets just to test the effectiveness of a coagulant, polygol. In this matter, Dr. Fritz Friedrich Karl Rascher testified about a report that he found on the desk of his nephew, Dr. Sigmund Rascher, at Dachau when the latter was not present. So his uncle finds this report about it, and he's testifying about it with that. And I also have that here. Yeah. The report, he describes the report as follows. It refers to a report about the shooting execution of 4 people for the purpose of experimenting with the hemostatic preparation Polygol 10. As far as I remember, they were a Russian commissar and a Cretan. I do not remember who the other 2 were. The Russian was shot in the right shoulder from above by an SS man who stood on a chair. The bullet emerged near the spleen. It was described how the Russian twitched convulsively, then sat down on a chair and died after about 20 minutes. In the dissection protocol, the rupture of the pulmonary vessels and the aorta was described. It was further described that the ruptures were tamponed or plugged by hard blood clots. That could have been the only explanation for the comparatively long lifespan after the shot. After reading this first protocol, I was so shocked I did not read the others. At the end of 1943 or beginning of 1944, I received a letter from my nephew in which he informed me that he and his wife had been arrested because of illegal adoption and registration of a child. So I don't know if you remember Dr. Sigmund Rascher and his wife were those who were trying to be like, look, my wife is like 46 and she can have all these kids. In reality, they were just stealing kids.
Yes.
This is them.
Okay.
Since this occurrence in 1943 or 44, I've not heard from either Dr. Sigmund Rascher or his wife. Only in 1946, I learned from various people that my nephew had been shot at Dachau before the arrival of the Americans, and his wife had been hanged at Ravensbrück or Berlin on orders of Himmler. So they died before these particular trials happened. Yeah. So that's why you're not hearing their names along with the other convicted. In another affidavit given by Oswald Pohl, it says that Wolfram Sievers told me the following. Acne-Nerbe, of which Sievers was manager. This was that sort of society that studied strange things. Yeah. But Sievers was the manager of it, but said that he was developing a drug in Dachau by orders of Himmler, which had as its result the quick coagulation of blood. Said it was very important for fighting units because it prevented their bleeding to death. The experiments in Dachau, during which one inmate was shot, have proved these results. So just some extra detail there. Mm-hmm. Now, similarly, there were experiments in which unwilling prisoners and subjects were intentionally injected with phenol, or in its liquid form, it would be called carbolic acid. This is a corrosive poison in its pure form that has many uses outside the human body. Phenol is used as a precursor to many detergents, herbicides, explosives. It's a type of organic compound. While toxic to consume on its own, it is available in tiny doses in many household products like mouthwash, throat sprays, spray cleaners. It's also used in the manufacturing of resins and plastics. It can be used in small concentrations on unbroken skin to kill germs. It's used in cleaners, soaps, sterilizing equipment. It's also used as a preservative in small concentrations for cosmetics, wooden objects, tools, other porous surfaces. It can be used in some chemical peels and in nerve blocks. It is actually used in some throat sprays for sore throats, again, in very small concentrations. We're talking like 1.4% in solution. It's also used in vaccines as a preservative, again, in very small concentrations. And it's used to basically make sure bacteria growth does not occur in those vaccines. With throat sprays and oral analgesics, these should only be used for a few days at a time at the right dose per instruction, and should not be used in children younger than 3 years old because it can be dangerous. It is in the typhoid fever, polio, smallpox, pneumonia, and meningitis vaccines, again, to prevent bacterial growth in very small amounts. It has uses in laboratory applications. It was once used for stopping the regrowth of toenails in cases of severe ingrown toenails. Okay. Now they use sodium hydroxide, I believe, because it has less complications. There's even been cases of phenol injections to the muscles to help muscle spasticity in Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, or brain trauma. It's basically similar to having a Botox botulinum injection to help with smaller muscle groups. Phenol is just more useful for larger muscle groups, and it's given under the care and supervision of a physician. There are different, less toxic forms that actually have health benefits. These are not phenol in its pure form, however, so I just want to avoid any sort of confusion there. Bioflavonoids, such as found in fruits, vegetables, teas, and wines, tocopherols like vitamin E, and the like are all phenol-based antioxidants. Getting phenols from a diet heavy in plants containing phenolic compounds and foods fortified with phenols have shown to help strengthen the immune system and make cells more resistant to cancer throughout their life cycle. So again, the dose/concentration makes the poison, as does the specific chemical variation.
There you go.
However, it was pure phenol that was used in these experiments, not the kind we were just talking about.
Okay.
And this can cause extensive damage to soft tissues, muscles, and nerves. Phenol is well absorbed by all routes of exposure. Exposure by any route can cause systemic effects. If pure phenol is left on the skin, it will penetrate rapidly and lead to cell death and gangrene. If more than 60 square inches of skin are affected, there is risk for imminent death. Phenol appears to have local anesthetic properties, so it can actually cause extensive damage before you even feel pain. Eating or drinking pure phenol or anything contaminated with it can damage your esophagus, stomach, intestines, and other digestive organs. It can be fatal if you have enough of it at one time. Accidental and intentional ingestions of phenol have been reported with deaths. As little as 50 to 500 milligrams has been fatal in infants. Deaths in adults have resulted after ingestions of 1 to 32 grams. Yeah, pure phenol application to the skin will cause blisters and burns. Inhalation of phenol has led to trouble breathing and muscle twitching in animal studies. It's also known to cause swelling of the throat, inflammation of the trachea, tracheal ulceration, and an accumulation of fluid in the lungs. Ingestion may lead to death from respiratory failure as well because of the close vicinity between, the esophagus and the trachea. It's also led to systemic organ damage, such as with the heart, lungs, kidneys. Technically, acute poisoning can occur through inhalation, skin contact, eye contact, or ingestion, but these experiments we're discussing here involve the direct intravenous injection. In these cases, death is likely and results in quicker symptoms, obviously. Typically, transient central nervous system excitation occurs, then profound central nervous system depression ensues rapidly. You'll have high blood pressure, really high blood pressure, followed by very rapidly decreasing blood pressure, and then shock, that kind of thing. Damage to the nervous system is the primary cause of death from phenol poisoning, but there's also damage to other organ systems. It'll cause acidosis, kidney failure. Initial signs and symptoms will include nausea, abdominal pain, vomiting, diarrhea, excessive sweating, tachycardia, arrhythmias, headaches, dizziness, and ringing in the ears. Sudden collapse, seizures, loss of consciousness, coma, respiratory depression, and death ensue. Coma and seizures usually occur within minutes to a few hours after exposure, but may be delayed up to 18 hours. Now, with it being given through injection here, obviously it took much less time. So there's basically everything you likely never wanted to know about phenol. So back to the specifics of what took place at these concentration camps. Now, phenol-containing serum was given intravenously, was tested on unwilling prisoners in these camps for the supposed reason of finding a cure for gas gangrene. What the heck is that? It's a deadly infection caused by the anaerobic bacteria Clostridium perfringens. This bacteria thrives in wounds that are often very deep, such as those received via battle or crushing injuries, surgical incisions.
Okay.
The bacteria is mostly found in soil and in the intestines, but once it contaminates a wound like this, it just thrives in the oxygen-free environment.
We're both familiar with Clostridium difficile.
Oh, yeah.
You intimately.
Never want that again.
Uh-huh.
I mean, a lot of Clostridium bacteria are ruthless.
Right.
But this one it thrives in that oxygen-free environment of the damaged tissue, and it can produce toxins. Now, these toxins kill cells, block blood vessels, and prevent immune cells from reaching the site. Because of this, necrosis occurs rapidly. So the metabolism of the tissue by the bacteria produces this foul-smelling gas, which is where it gives gas gangrene its name. It is life-threatening within hours of the start of symptoms and can kill quickly and painfully. It was much more common during wars of the past, before adequate cleansing of wounds, killing of germs was consistent practice. And you may think, so it's necrotizing fasciitis? No, it's similar though. Necrotizing fasciitis destroys the fat under your skin and the connective tissues that support your body. So the fascia giving you fasciitis, right? Gas gangrene infects and destroys your blood cells, blood vessels, and muscle tissues. So necrotizing fasciitis can be caused by several different bacteria, but it's usually caused by group A strep or staph, as opposed to Clostridium typically causing gas gangrene. So just some info there. And I mention all that information because they literally attempted to cause this kind of gangrene in these people that they were experimenting on. So both of those sort of bits of knowledge matter. Gas gangrene was affecting German soldiers, among others, as I'm sure sanitation, hygiene, and proper wound cleansing in the field were hard to come by still. Now, one of the defendants in the Nazi doctor's case, Dr. Mogrowski, who we've heard that name quite a bit now, testified that no infection can be taken so seriously in the surgical field as the infection by gas gangrene, since the mortality cases of these injuries were very high. So they knew that what this led to. The fact of the matter here is that phenol injected into a vein kills you, whether you have gas gangrene or not.
What do you know?
So this experiment actually became a method to commit mass murder through euthanasia. And we're going to talk in a little bit with some other experiments where they were trying to treat this gas gangrene, meaning they were causing this gangrene-like condition in these subjects. So that itself is experimentation and just brutal. But the phenol experiments actually just became more of a method of euthanasia. It was reported that at Ravensbrück, doctors would cut into the muscle tissues of prisoners and implant bacterial cultures onto the damaged tissue. Samples of cultures included staph and strep bacteria at first. Then they would put wood shavings into the wound as well. Again, we'll come back to that when we talk about the sulfanilamide experiments, because ultimately the study for finding a remedy to gas gangrene and other serious infections would involve sulfanilamide. Now, phenol, as I said, became a main method for euthanasia to cure the German people and state from what they called subhuman elements. Just literally their words. By this, they meant Jews, Gypsies, Slavs, the sick or diseased, feeble-minded, intellectually impaired, epileptics, blind, deformed, mentally ill, and undesirables. Their term for criminals, homosexuals, alcoholics, etc. So murder. Okay. Now, the methods used at first involved the IV injection of undiluted phenol, but this later progressed to the direct injection of phenol into the heart through the chest, as it was deemed faster and more efficient. So, I'm going to read you what Dr. Hoven had to say about this.
Mm-hmm. To whom it may concern.
I know that was a lot of information, but I felt like it was...
No, I'm with you.
It makes it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't make it make sense that they did this, but it,
not moral sense. Clinical.
Right. So one of the defendants in these cases, Dr. Hoven, he testified. He was the chief physician at Buchenwald. Mm-hmm. In some instances, I supervised the killing of these unworthy inmates. These are his words, and the words that they use for these prisoners are just awful. So, yeah. By injections of phenol at the request of the inmates. These killings took place in the camp hospital, and I was assisted by several inmates. On one occasion, Dr. Ding, who we'll talk about again later too, came to the hospital to witness such killings with phenol and said that I was not doing it correctly. Therefore, he performed some of the injections himself. At that time, 3 inmates were killed with phenol injections, and they died within a minute. The total number of traitors, as they called them, killed was about 150, of whom 60 were killed by phenol injections, either by myself or under my supervision in the camp hospital, and the rest were killed by various means, such as beatings by the inmates. These beatings that he's referring to would actually be because there were prisoners who received preferential treatment as well. There were those privileged inmates that would help the Nazi doctors, for better treatment. Mm-hmm. So this would cause jealousy on the part of those who were not that. Dr. Erwin Schuler, also known as Dr. Ding, he was a witness of euthanasia with undiluted raw phenol at Buchenwald. It says 1 by 1, 4 or 5 prisoners were led in. The upper part of the body was naked so that their nationality patch on their clothing could not be distinguished. The condition of their bodies was bad and their age was advanced. I do not remember a diagnosis as to why euthanasia was to take place, but probably I did not ask about it either. They sat down quietly on a chair, that is, without any sign of excitement, near a light. A male nurse blocked the vein in the arm, and Dr. Hoven quickly injected the phenol. They died in an immediate total convulsion during the actual injection without any sign of other pain. The time between the beginning of the injection and death, I estimate at about 1/2 second. The rest of the dose was injected as a precautionary measure, although part of the injection would have been enough for the fatal result. The dead were carried into an adjoining room by the nurses. I estimate the time of my presence at 10 minutes. The total number of those killed by phenol injection was over 20,000. Mrogrowski and Hoven were convicted on the charges of euthanasia by phenol. Handloser was charged but acquitted on these specific charges. Also, when it comes to Dr. Ding, we'll describe what happened to him a little bit later. But now back to those experiments for treatments on gas gangrene, because obviously phenol kills people. I mentioned that prisoners were cut into and had this bacteria and wood shavings applied to the injured sites. Experiments involving such injuries and sulfanilamide were done at Ravensbrück between July 20th, 1942 and August of 1943. 60 Polish women and 15 male prisoners were chosen for this experiment. For the women, the studies were done as 5 groups of 12. In the beginning, the 15 male inmates were used to determine how to artificially cause a gas gangrene infection. In these cases, an incision was made about 10 centimeters long into the muscle, and infectious bacteria and wood shavings were forced into the wounds. And you have to remember, too, that this is mostly being done, if not all being done, without any kind of pain medication or anything. After this initial intentional infection was started, attempts were made to further the severity of them over time. The women involved in the study were then treated in the same manner, but this time the bacterial culture was introduced with wood shavings for one group, the culture with glass fragments for another group, and the other group was with the culture alongside glass and wood.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of mimicking a study design that you would see in a clinical trial, but it has absolutely no justification. It's just absurd.
Well, when no one was dying quick enough from this, they conducted a whole new experiment with 24 Polish women in which infection was started in a similar way. They would cut and then introduce the bacteria plus a foreign fragment. But this time, the circulation of blood was purposely cut off from the muscle tissue by tying off the muscle where the infection was introduced at each end. This led to serious infections and death. 5 died as a direct result of the experiments, and 6 were just executed later by shooting. 4 Polish women later testified about these experiments at the trials at Nuremberg, stating that 74 Polish women, 1 German woman, and 1 Ukrainian woman were experimented on. The only survivor in one of these cases, these 5 series of women, was a woman named Kusmersuk, and she was able to testify at Nuremberg. Her infection and wound did not heal for at least 2 years after it was made, and she suffered lasting injuries because of this experiment. Others involved in these studies described the pain they experienced and the cries for help and just, begging for water that they listened to constantly. A witness to these experiments, who also happened to be an X-ray tech before being imprisoned, described how one 23-year-old woman who had been severely infected with gangrene died after her leg became blacker and blacker. She was only given care for a few days before being taken away and suffered pain days before dying. This witness stated that an amputation may have saved the girl, and she described 4 other deaths that she witnessed as well. Karl Brandt, Handloser, Mrogrowski, Gebhardt, Oberhauser, and Fischer were all convicted of criminal conduct in relation to the sulfanilamide experiments. And of course, the defense put forth from them was that these women were criminals condemned to death and had been given an opportunity for pardon in exchange for participation in these experiments. None of the women involved had ever gone through any sort of trial to be labeled as any sort of criminal, and were simply against the Nazi movement and therefore taken to the concentration camps. As regards treatment of infections like those perpetuated on these women, it's already known that the best course of action would be antibiotics and wound dressing and cleaning. So these experiments, again, had no purpose outside of twisted curiosity, torture, and murder. Mustard gas.
All right.
So chemical warfare is something we've discussed before. We've mentioned it with World War I and how World War I was sometimes called the chemist's war, because of how prevalent, their use became at that time. Mm-hmm. They were also a source of fear, injury, and death in World War II. One of these chemical weapons involved the use of mustard gas, also known as Lost, the Lost gas. I'm not sure why it's called that, but we would know it as mustard gas. The Nazis experimented with this poison gas at many concentration camps, including Natzweiler and Sachsenhausen between 1939 and 1945. The idea was to find treatments for burns caused by mustard gas. In many of these experiments, unwilling subjects were wounded on one or both arms, and the wounds were then exposed directly to mustard gas, causing great pain and swelling. Others in these experiments were made to inhale mustard gas fumes, or ingest it in liquid form, or have it injected into them.
All right.
The experiments at Natzweiler began in 1942, performed by Professor Dr. Hirt. It's H-I-R-T, but it makes sense because Hirt. He was a professor at the University of Strasbourg when France was occupied by Nazi Germany, and Wolfram Sievers. Now, about 220 Russian, Polish, Czech, and German inmates were experimented on, and 50 were known to have died as a result. Another gas used in these experiments was phosgene, which I know we've talked about as well. 40 Russian prisoners of war who were described in documents as weak and underfed were exposed to phosgene gas, then treated with an experimental drug. 4 died while the rest suffered severe pulmonary edema. For reference, in case anyone's forgotten some differences between mustard gas and phosgene gas has this sort of musty hay smell, and it's colorless. It causes delayed action poisoning by reacting with proteins in the lungs, leading to choking and lung failure, often resulting in death. Mustard gas is yellowish in color, and it smells like mustard or garlic typically. It's a blistering agent, and it can cause severe and painful chemical burns, eye damage, and respiratory issues. Recovery after exposure is typically long and very painful, and it can also result in death. However, phosgene does have a higher death rate as it kills pretty quickly. Mustard gas is terrifying and can contaminate land for long periods, though, too.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some, I want to say this is testimony from a hospital inmate trustee. They were known as capos. Ferdinand Hall's testimony about this. Sorry, let me go back here. I literally marked so many things. I mean, I like to include sources and such.
And the people love you for that, just so you know.
So in his report, he stated, the first experiments were attended by Professor Hirt. After that, it was a German aviation officer who carried out the experiments. The prisoners were stripped completely naked. They came into the laboratory one after the other. Then I had to hold their arms, and a drop of this fluid was rubbed on their arm 10 centimeters above their forearm. Then the people who had been treated accordingly had to stand waiting with their arms spread out. After about 10 hours, maybe it was a bit longer, burn injuries began to cover their whole body. Their bodies were burnt in all of those places where fumes from this gas reached. Some of the people also went blind. The pain was so tremendous that one could hardly stand being near the victims. Then they were photographed each day, all of the injured parts of their body, each of the burned areas. About on the 5th or 6th day, we had our first death. At that time, the dead were sent to Strasbourg because there was no crematorium in the camp. The dead man was sent back and was dissected in the Aktenherbe, the research foundation. His intestines, lungs, and so forth were completely eaten away. Then, during the following several days, 7 more people died. This treatment lasted about 2 months until they were more or less transportable. Then these people were sent to a different camp. On the following day, that is, on the 7th day of the experiment, another 7 of the experimental subjects died. He goes on to mention that 22 of the remaining subjects were sent to another camp, and he says that other experiments on concentration camp inmates of the Natzweiler concentration camp were carried out in the gas chamber. The experimental subjects had to enter this gas chamber 2 by 2. They had to smash small ampules which contained the liquid evaporated, and the experimental subject then had to inhale the resulting vapor. Usually the experimental subjects became unconscious. Their breathing organs of the experimental subjects were likewise destroyed. Their lungs had been eaten away by the gas. About 150 concentration inmates were experimented upon in this manner. Approximately the same percentage as in the first series died as a result of this type of experimentation. Other lost mustard gas experiments were carried out by means of injection in a special room adjoining the crematorium. The victims died without exception. Another type of experiment was carried out on the experimental subjects who had to take the liquid orally. Hall was actually moved to a different camp before the end of these experiments, but he returned about a month later and was able to confirm that they continued until the fall of 1944, when Notzweiler was liberated by the Allies. And according to his report, 220 inmates were forced into these gas experiments, of which at least 50 died. Of course, Karl Brandt, one of the Nazi doctors being charged with such things in this trial, hit back against the prosecution in this case with, "All nations do it."
Brother.
In his words, "The general need for experiments on human beings, and only those are relevant here, has been recognized by all nations as a military necessity." Karl Brandt, Rudolf Brandt, and Wolfram Sievers were convicted of crimes involving these gas experiments. Others were charged but acquitted as being a part of these. Similarly, there were some experiments carried out that involved the simulation of injuries of incendiary bombs, typically dropped in areas of battle around this time. These experiments, various ointments and treatments were studied for effectiveness. Incendiary bombs are those that cause fires, destroy structures, cause severe burns using such substances as napalm, thermite, or white phosphorus. They are now banned internationally as a weapon of war, especially against civilians, but this has not stopped their use by some even recently.
Mm-hmm.
Such experiments with these were conducted at Buchenwald by Dr. Ding Schuler, who I said we're going to talk more about. So, in November of 1943, 5 prisoners were selected and purposely burned using ignited phosphorus. The burns were severe, incredibly painful, and caused lasting injuries. As described in one of the reports covering these experiments, a phosphorus mixture was applied to an inmate's skin and then ignited. It was allowed to burn for 20 seconds before being extinguished with water, then wiped with a liquid carbon tetrachloride solvent known as R17, which was their experimental treatment. In another experiment, an inmate involved in the study was treated with the same way, but the phosphorus was allowed to burn for 55 seconds before it went out by itself. The same treatment was applied. In other such studies, the burning was allowed for 30, 40, and 50 seconds before it went out by itself. In one incident, a cloth with the phosphorus on it was placed on an inmate's skin, then ignited and allowed to burn for 67 seconds before it burned out on its own. The majority of the cloth carbonized. Other treatments used on these intentional burns included cod liver oil treatment, ointment, and other topical substances. Swelling, blisters, and scabs occurred in all cases, and the burn wounds took about 6 weeks on average to heal. I have Dr. Kogan, who I know I've already mentioned some testimony from him, talking about this as well. Oh my gosh, these people, man, freaking insane. Yeah, they were questioning him. And he says the contents of phosphorus incendiary bombs were sent to Buchenwald, and 4 experimental subjects from Block 46 who had survived other experiments had this phosphorus liquid applied to their forearms.
I just smacked my microphone. Sorry.
This makes me want to smack things too. It's fine. Yeah, this phosphorus liquid was applied to their forearms. The whole mass was then ignited and was treated in various manners. I actually have, this is a black and white image, but the result of some of these burns was just insane.
I can tell that's awful. That's a terrible photo, but
this was
I can tell it's bad.
Yeah, these were like photos used in these trials too. So there's many.
Exhibit C.
This would have been Exhibit 288. And there were many more. Now, he says, I personally saw all the experimental subjects because this experiment was carried out in the private room of Dr. Ding in Block 50 and in the library of the Hygiene Institute in Block 50. The reason for this was that the experiment in Block 46 among the experimental subjects that were located there and who were destined for other purposes would have caused far too much excitement. They asked, were these burns very severe? As far as I can recall, they were very severe in 3 out of the 4 cases. Did the experimental subjects suffer any pain? Capo Arthur Deach had suggested that the subjects be given an anesthetic as soon as they came to Block 50 so that violent scenes could be avoided. And in Block 50, which was completely different from Block 46, having persons handcuffed, as was the common practice in Block 46, was to be avoided. Do you know whether the injuries they received are permanent? In the case of some of the wounds, it is completely impossible that they will ever become completely healed. Very deep scars must have remained because the wounds were big and were as deep as 2 to 2.5 centimeters. Do you know whether any of the experimental subjects died? 4 persons were returned to Block 46, and I do not know anything about the future fate which awaited them there. I especially do not know if they were used for further experiments. Do you know the nationality of the experimental persons used? No, however, all 4 wore the green triangle to signify that they were habitual criminals and they were Germans. One of the defendants, these Nazi doctors.
Habitual criminals.
Well, they would call it anybody that's basically against their views of, Nazism and.
Yeah, that means nothing.
Yeah, they call them this. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
But Dr. McGrosky basically also gave testimony saying that when after a considerable time, I still had not heard from Reich physician whether the drug R17 was to be made known to the air raid precaution dispensaries. I asked the Reich physician about it at a meeting, and he declared that the drug would not be introduced as it only possessed phosphorus-dissolving properties, but did not directly contribute to the healing of burns. So none of this came to anything. Anyway, it was awful. So
it's almost like it was just torture.
Yeah. In the case of experiments with incendiary bomb simulations, Genskin, Gebhardt, McGrosky, and Poppendick were charged, but all were acquitted in this matter. Now, Dr. Ding Schuler was already deceased at this point. He was one of the main people involved in this particular experiment. He actually died by suicide in an American prison camp in Freising, Germany, shortly after being arrested by American forces in August of 1945, right before the Nuremberg trials began. He was also head of the typhus experiments at Buchenwald, among other stuff. Yeah. Now, I mentioned with the phenol experiments that the substance to be tested was instead used in the euthanasia program, which was urged on by Hitler in asylums and in concentration camps. There were, however, other methods used in the euthanasia program. We've already discussed like carbon monoxide, which was used from like just engines, like diesel engines and such, as well as Zyklon B, which was the hydrogen cyanide pesticide that was used in the gas chambers, and now phenol. But there was also the use of barbiturates like Evipan. This changed it to Evian, like the water, but no, it's Evipan. Evipan. Other injectable substances tested for use in this matter included hydrogen perhydrol, which is this concentrated hydrogen peroxide, also regular hydrogen peroxide, ether, benzene, and Evipan. And my last bit of information here, I know I've probably been talking for way too long. There's a whole chapter in here on euthanasia. And I do want to mention basically the start of it. Hitler gave defendant Dr. Karl Brandt on September 1st, 1939, the responsibility to execute a euthanasia program by enlarging the authority of certain physicians to be designated by name in such a manner that persons who, according to human judgment, are incurable can, upon a most careful diagnosis of their condition of sickness, be accorded a mercy death, as they called it. There was a special department that was established to kill children with mental and physical deficiencies. Previous consultation with parents or relatives about the killing of these children did not take place. That the child was going to be killed was categorized as top secret. Half Jewish healthy children were among the estimated 5,000 who were killed. As a part of that, patients in nursing homes, asylums, and hospitals who were aged, insane, or who had arteriosclerosis, tuberculosis, cancer, or other disabling illnesses were termed as useless eaters. people who no longer had any value to the state were to be accorded a mercy death by starvation. The position of defendant Karl Brandt in his closing brief to the court was, the aim of euthanasia was to solve an old medical problem. The elimination of useless eaters was the principal rationale of the whole program.
Such a grotesque thing to say.
There was an affidavit from radio interview. This person who did a radio interview, basically, by London radio commentator Robert Graham with a Pastor Bodelschwig. He was the chief of mental institutions of Bethel in the summer of 1945 after the war. So this is something that happened after the war that was talked about. And this pastor declared that one should not consider Karl Brandt a criminal, but ironically, an idealist. This is a pastor.
Oh my God.
This is a pastor, yeah.
My brother in Christ, you are not going to heaven when you die.
He ain't my brother. Now,
that's insane.
This also, just discusses how the doctors who performed euthanasia were warned that they would be severely punished if they sabotaged the work. It was to be kept secret. Defendants such as Karl Brandt and Brack admitted that about 50 to 60,000 people were killed in the euthanasia program in Germany and Austria alone. This was an interesting thing here by the Bishop of Limburg at the time, Dr. Hilfrich. And this is a letter that he had written to Reich Minister of Justice in Berlin, basically protesting the killing of mentally ill people. In a part of this letter, he mentions several times a week buses arrive in Hadamar with a considerable number of such victims. School children of the vicinity know this vehicle and say, there comes the murder box again. After the arrival of the vehicle, the citizens of Hadamar would watch the smoke rise out of the chimney and are tortured with the ever-present thought of depending on the direction of the wind. The effect of the principles at work here are that children call each other names and say, you're crazy, you'll be sent to the baking oven in Hadamar.
Good Lord.
Those who do not want to marry or find no opportunity say, marry never. Bring children into the world so they can be put into the bottling machine. When the feeble-minded have been finished off, the next useless eaters, whose turn will come, are the old people. So that's part of that as well.
Okay.
And then there's I won't read all of this, but there is a whole breakdown of somebody being a witness to all of these, to many of these euthanasia killings, and basically how they buried them and how quick they just went for the next group, and it was just awful. And they were taking gold teeth out of people's mouths, any sort of gold they could get. He talks about how this captain handed him a large tin full of teeth and said, estimate for yourself the weight of gold. This is only from yesterday and the day before, and you would not believe what we find every day. Dollars, diamonds, gold, as if they were stealing from these people that they were killing.
It's unreal.
Yeah. And so this one professor who was down with all this, I'm going to try to say his name, Pfannenstiel. He was the hygiene professor at the University of Marburg. He had made this speech where he said, your task is a great duty, a duty useful and necessary. To me alone, he talked of this institution in terms of beauty of the task and it being a humane cause. And speaking to all of them, he would look at them and say, looking at the bodies of these Jews, one understands the greatness of your good work after their death,
Mm-hmm.
So it's, like I said, really dark. And there were other methods used, but I did want to, the main purpose of this episode was to talk about the different poisons used and phenol amongst other things used for the euthanasia program. We're part of that. So.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. We'll see you in the next one.
Go watch something funny now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.